In this video with the AnKing, I'm going to go over how to study for step 3. Complete the series here because I've already done step 1 and step 2. So I'm going to start with an outline here, just give you basically what I'm going to go through in this video, and this is going to be much shorter than the step 1 and step 2 videos, thankfully. It was much more a straightforward study schedule. So I'm going to go over my background, how I did on the test. I'll talk about the importance of step 3, the exam itself and what to expect on that day, how I studied for it, and then what my post-exam thoughts were and things that I would do the same or change. So just by way of background, I did well on step 1 and step 2. You can thank our graphic designer on the team for these fun thumbnails. But I did well on both of these tests, and that's just something to keep in mind. I had a strong background going into step 3. I did Anki very consistently through my first through third years of medical school. I didn't do it for my 4th year. So just keep that in mind. I think it's important. Now, I haven't actually shared my score on step 1 and step 2, but I figured I would just share it here for step 3. It doesn't matter to me here, but you can see how I did. Now, to put this into comparison, you have to really look. This is the percentiles on where scores fall in. And a 260 on step 1 is not the same as a 260 on step 2, which is not the same as it is on step 3. So from step 1 to step 2, I actually fell about 10 percentile points. Whereas step 3, I went down more into like the 75th percentile. So my percentile of scores actually went down, on each of the exams, but that was okay. And there was a reason for that. Step 1 was more important to me than step 2. I realize a lot of you, watching this video are probably, were in the pass fail region. But for step 3, my score didn't matter to me that much, which brings me into the importance of step 3. What is the importance? Do you need to do well on this test? What's the big deal? One consideration is fellowships. Will fellowships look at this? I have heard that GI fellowships and cardiology fellowships, there are a select few of those that do seem to care about this. I'm in dermatology. It seems like they don't care that much, but it does go on your application. When you think about it, like when you're applying to fellowships, that's 3 or 4 years out from when you've taken this test. So that would be like looking at your MCAT score to apply to residency. So I don't know that it really matters that much, but it may matter, and that's just something to keep in mind. For reapplicants, I think that it probably is more important. So if you didn't match, or you only matched a prelim year and you are trying to take step 3 before you apply for the next round, step 3 is definitely a way to show that you studied really hard, you did well, and set yourself apart from other reapplicants. So it can be important there. And then I just got an empty bullet here because, to be completely honest with you, I'm not sure, other than passing this and getting your certification, I don't know that this really is super important. So the exam itself is really long and painful. I won't lie to you. The first day is 7 hours, and it's 6 blocks of 38 to 39 questions. And the reason it's not 40 questions like it was on step 1 and step 2 is because pretty much every block has a drug add question and a lot of biostat stuff. So they're really long, involved questions where you have to be looking at a drug add and then pull out statistics and stuff like that. Pretty much every single block is going to have that. And then day 2 is a longer day. And you have 6 blocks of 30 questions in the morning, which is a little different. You have 45-minute blocks, so the timing is different than what you're used to. And then the second half of the day is all of these cases. And I'll explain that later. I'm actually going to show you how I studied for them and such. But you have about 13 cases. Some of them are 10 minutes, some of them are 20 minutes. Your hands are going to hurt from typing at the end of it, but you're going to be so glad that you're finished. I don't think it will matter. One thing that I will mention, just because I didn't actually make a slide for this, is get McDonald's in the morning or some really high protein, high fat thing. I've done that for every exam. It worked really well. Something that's high in protein and fat, the beginning of the day, it'll help hold you through so you don't get hungry during the day. If you're going to use caffeine, use it sparingly, use it to help you keep you attentive, but not that you have to pee. And then, I would bring protein stuff for lunch as well. So I was bringing stuff like trail mix and things like that. It just helps you get through the day quicker. And then, go celebrate after you're finished. Okay, so how I studied. Firstly, I suspended all of my Anki cards after step 2. So that was at the end of my 3rd year in medical school. So my whole 4th year in medical school, I was not doing any Anki cards. And even through the beginning of residency, I wasn't. I ended up taking the exam in December. So from July, I didn't even start studying until closer to, I believe, October, November time period. So I really wasn't doing any Anki cards for a year and a half. When I was going through practice questions and stuff, I made my own cards on questions that I got wrong, or I unsuspended cards from the step 1 and step 2 deck. And I actually found myself doing that quite often. I was very surprised how much overlap there was and how, like, the lack of new content on step 3. I did 50% of UWorld. I'll show you that in a minute. I did UWorld tests 1 and 2, and they were garbage. They were absolutely awful. Both of them showed that I was like barely passing, like did terrible. I thought the tests were way too difficult, not helpful at all to gauge where I was and whether I was ready to study for the exam, and just made me feel bad about myself the week before the exam. So honestly, I wouldn't even take them. UWorld has CCS cases as well. I didn't even touch them because everybody recommended that I do CCS cases website, and I'll show you that in a minute. I did about 30 of those. I sorted it by which ones were high yield, quote unquote. So I'll show you that when I actually show you the website and how I did that. I didn't do the free 120 test, but looking back, I think that's probably what I would have done because the UWorld tests were awful. And then I didn't do any NBMEs, and to be honest, I don't even know if they're good or whether they're worth doing. But unless you're really trying to get a super solid score for some reason, I don't think it matters. I feel like I was just fine doing UWorld. I want to give a couple thoughts on AMBOSS here. So I've actually talked to one of the head content writers at AMBOSS about AMBOSS's ability to study for step 3, and at the time they didn't have a step 3, but actually now if you look, there is something to sort for step 3. And I know that the person who was the content author, he's like the head over this at AMBOSS, he actually took step 3 and was very involved in things, and he and I had long lengthy discussions about it. Long story short, I didn't really trust AMBOSS to study for step 3 myself. But looking back, I think it would have been just fine. I think UWorld is recycling step 2 questions for their step 3 section, and AMBOSS likely it does the same thing, because there's so much overlap with step 1 and step 2. So I think AMBOSS honestly would have been just fine if you choose to do that. If you have a lifetime subscription or something like that and don't want to spend money on UWorld, I think that's perfectly fine. I have tended to be a trendsetter, and here I wasn't brave enough, but looking back, I think it would have been just fine. So what I did is I studied for about 6 weeks. I was doing roughly a block a day. I kind of mapped it out, planning that I was going to finish 50% of the UWorld questions. And then I was doing CCS cases, and I tended to do those more towards the end of my studying. So I did more questions up front, and then I did more CCS cases towards the end. And then I reviewed biostats and ethics. I reviewed the AMBOSS learning cards because I think they are the gold standard for biostats and ethics. They're incredible. Back in the day, I watched the Boards and Beyond Biostatistics videos, and I felt they were very, very helpful. So if you have a Boards and Beyond subscription, by all means, I would definitely recommend that, but it wouldn't be worth purchasing Boards and Beyond just for that. And here's what it looked like, on UWorld when I finished. So I did almost 50%. I did 48% of the questions. I had 68% correct by the end, but you can see I started very low. I was down in the 40s when I first started, and slowly creeped up. I had a day there when I got 100% on one block, which was really exciting. But that's where I was. And so you can use that to compare where my score was. So, about 68% correct on UWorld translated to about 75th percentile on the test. So CCS cases, I want to actually pull up the website and show that to you right now so you get a feel for what this is and why it's important. I think this is very, very important that everybody does this and gets the hang of some of these things, because this is totally new, and there are ways that, there's little tips and tricks that will be helpful. So I'll show you that now. This is the CCS cases website. UWorld has this as well, but, like I said, it wasn't a super big deal. I just signed up for the free one. There's actually probably well over 100 cases here when you sign up and purchase it. And you can sort by time limit, you can sort by title, whatever you want. I sorted by high yield and then just started working down from there. And this is students decide that this is high yield and vote that this is a high yield thing. But it's probably true, things like this are generally high yield, whereas there were some ones that were working up celiac disease and stuff like that were way lower yield, and that's probably true based off my experience in the exam. I felt like, it was more bread and butter stuff, but this is really helpful. Now, one thing, basically what's going to happen is you're going to be presented with a case, and then you're going to start typing. Now, this is actually going to time me and stop me, so I'll try and go through a little bit here with you and explain what I'm doing. But I had a notability note on my iPad where I would write things down. Now, this is what I had written down as things that I want to order on everybody. So basically every single patient, I would order these. And you don't really get penalized unless it's an invasive procedure. So you can over order, and sometimes it's helpful. So just keep that in mind. For example, I'll scroll over here. I had decided that I was going to order a beta HCG on every single female. And I did that on the actual exam, and it actually gave me some important information that I probably wouldn't have caught on to otherwise. So just keep things like that in mind. So anyway, I would do this, and my way of remembering what I was going to order is I always did like a CBC, CMP, CXR, EKG, troponin, because it just made sense. Like that's what a typical, emergency room order set would look like. But then I would start from like the head down and think my way through things. So I would think like, do I need anything with the nose and mouth? I'll get like an RVP. Do I need anything with the neck? I'll get like a TSH on them. Do I need anything with the chest? So my chest x-ray, my troponin, my, whatever. You have to actually get a pulse ox. You have to order that. They won't give that to you. And then I would think, what about the abdomen? Do I need anything? What about the urine? Do I need a UA? Do I need a urine culture? Do I need a beta HCG? Do I need a lipid profile? Whatever it may be. Things are not stable at all. Get a blood glucose, get an ABG. And I would start head down that way. If I'm thinking through this one case here with the altered mental status, I think, okay, I need a CT head. I need whatever. And I would just work my way down. That was just a system I used that seemed to be helpful for me. And then I found, if the patient might go to surgery, you should make them NPO, get a PT, PTT, and a type in screen. Was always really helpful. And then there's always, you're going to have the pre-case, the main case, and then afterwards you'll have 2 minutes where you basically get this, you can't work them up anymore, but you can say, is there any last minute things you want to order? And a lot of these things were helpful. So ordering vaccines if they're due for their flu shot, or if they're due for a pneumococcal vaccine or Tdap or whatever, if they're pregnant, advising them to stop smoking or alcohol or lose weight, whatever. Do you need to place any consults or referrals? Things like that was really helpful. The other thing to remember too is a lot of times I was working them up. I want to get things very quickly to the point where, I want to figure out what's going on. Don't forget to treat their symptoms. So if they're nauseous, give them droperidol or something. If they're in pain, give them morphine. You can generally do that with every single patient and get away with it. And you're just fine. It doesn't matter what you choose. You just have to give something. This is how I wrote things down after the case when I was trying to study, what did I get wrong? What do I need to do differently in the future? So, for example, this is with an altered mental status case, and I probably forgot to give them thiamine and dextrose, but I wrote the other things down to help me remember what should I be thinking about in a case like that. I probably didn't intubate order, but didn't do a ventilate order, didn't realize that you have to do that. That's why I said I think everybody needs to at least do some practice rounds with this, because there's just weird little things like that you wouldn't think about that will get you some points. I forgot about things, a decent amount of things on the unresponsive case. So just a good FYI, I wrote down basically everything I did if I got a significant amount wrong and didn't do well. So that's how that works. So I'm going to go into the actual case here and show you basically what it's like. So we'll start a case. Oh, great. We'll log back in and then we'll start a case. There we go. And this is what it's like. So it's going to tell you, a 65-year-old man, he's got sharp chest pain, difficulty breathing. You're going to click OK. It's going to give you all of their vital signs. So this guy's pulse rate's really fast, respiratory rate, and you're probably going to have to work through this pretty quickly. Now when you're here, it's going to give you more information. I'm just going to click through this. So you have 8 minutes for the case, 2 minutes for the end of the case. You have the elapsed real time down here, but you also have the simulated time. So you can get an interval history. Always start here. And I'm just going to do, I think you can pretty much do everything. It's not going to hurt you, but it is going to advance the time more. So if you're in a real hurry, like this guy, it may hurt you if you have a trauma case and you're doing too much. I don't really need to do this. I'm definitely going to look at all those and click OK. And now it's going to progress, it's going to take time for each of these. So I'll click OK. It's going to give me this guy's exam. And then you're going to write orders. So I would always come here and do that list that I showed you. My order set here. So I would do a CBC, CMP, CXR, EKG, TSH, RVP, pulse ox. Do I need anything else on this guy? You can do whatever. D-dimer. As long as it's a blood lab, it's not gonna hurt. Lipid. We'll do A1C, the UA. Anyway, you get the idea. That's what it's gonna be like. I'm going to delete some of these just to make it easier. We'll confirm the orders, and it's going to give you options here. So I'll say, yeah, that's what I wanted. And then I want this. Oops. Some of them, it's like chest x-ray, what do you want, right? So I'm going to say, this is fast, so I want whatever. You can do whatever you want, really. I've never had it matter. So you can also try things like what works, what doesn't. So I'm going to do that. And those are the report times. So now I want to wait, I have to wait until that time to get those. So you do obtain results, and you can do with next available result, or you can do this and it will just call you. You also need to change your location. Now, I don't need to change yet, but based off what's going on in the case, don't forget to do that, because if you do it too late, it's going to knock you off points. So I'll do next available result. Having severe chest pain. Oh, okay, that's why I said don't forget. I'm going to give you the guy morphine, nitro, oxygen. You're never going to get penalized for it, even though you wouldn't necessarily do that in the real world. And nitroglycerin, sublingual, oxygen. Probably need to give this guy aspirin because it's chest pain. Oops, aspirin therapy. Oral. Alright, so now we'll do it. The case was telling you, like, hey, you're not doing something right. Okay, normal EKG. We're just going to keep doing this. You can see all of his labs. Radiology shows complete collapse of the right lung. Okay, so then you're going to want to order he's having more trouble breathing. So we probably should have picked up on that earlier. Of course, I wasn't actually reading the case here, but that's kind of what you do. So now I'm going to order thoracotomy, and then we'll just call see me as needed so you can see what this works. Okay, they're agitated, continue, they're getting worse. Okay, whatever. I probably didn't do something right. Now you're at the end of the case, so you can't actually work anything up, but you can now put in like vaccines, like consult cardiology, which you could have consulted cardiology earlier. You could have done all that thing and then end the case. And now it's going to show you, okay, here's my score. Here's what like average people are getting. This is attention pneumo. So now you can put all of this stuff in and see I ordered a thoracotomy instead of a thoracostomy, and my timing was not good. I had 3 negative patient updates, so you shouldn't ever have that. Were you at the appropriate location? Eventually you probably would have transferred this person to inpatient or to ICU. Here's things you should be thinking about. Anyway, it's pretty helpful. I felt like these were really good. You can mark them for review later. That's what CCS cases is. I think they do a really good job of helping you understand what you need to do. And I felt like I was very prepared on test day. All right, so post-exam thoughts. These are up on Instagram. I made some live videos as I was walking home from the Step 3 test center. So I made one after day 1 and then after day 2. I'll put the links to both of these in the description. They're on Instagram, and I was answering questions and talking about my feelings about the exam as I was walking home. I definitely had some strong feelings, especially after day 1 there. Felt awful. I'll go over that briefly in a second here. So day 1, it was step 1 questions. I was shocked how many things were like drug mechanism of actions that I hadn't even thought about, or like biochemistry things. It was pretty shocking to me. I got home at the end of the day and texted one of my friends that had already taken step 3 and asked, was it really this difficult for you? Because I had a really struggle throughout the day. I felt like I was getting maybe 50% of the questions correct on each block. It was very difficult. So know that day 1 is probably going to be the hard one, but that's okay because day 2 gets a little bit better. Day 2 in the morning was more step 2 questions, which felt more like what I was prepared for. It was more what the UWorld questions were like. I felt like I did better on these. I had a lot less questions, but I still felt, a little like, whoa, what's going on? I'll be completely honest. I feel like step 3, walking out of the test, was the hardest test for me. Step 1, I knew I had done well. Step 2, I felt a little uneasy about it, but I felt okay. And step 3, I walked out thinking I have no idea how I did. Like, that was easily the hardest test I've ever taken in my life. So just, to get a sense of it. In the afternoon with the CCS cases, I actually felt pretty good about these. I think I got to the answer on all of them, and you can kind of tell when you get to the answer because the case will end early. And if you're not getting to the answer, you'll start getting things that will tell you like the patient's having more pain or the patient's symptoms are getting worse. So then you haven't done the right thing. Whereas in most of my cases, like, it would say like, oh, good job, like the consult's going to come see the patient or whatever. So I felt like I got to the bottom of most of these and did a good job. And then day 3 is freedom. I mean, you feel so good having been done with this. You don't have another test until your board exams or whatever it is for your residency. It's a really, really great feeling. So anyway, that's my thoughts really on step 3. I know this is a very simple video, But hopefully that's helpful for those of you that are taking it, and good luck with residency.
Thanks for learning with the AnKing. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel here, as well as follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Patreon. That is at AnKingMed. Also, feel free to reach out via email or check out our website, ankingmed.com, for more tips and tricks.